I call the meeting to order. Are we properly noticed?
The meeting has been posted according to law.
Roll call, please.
President Johnson.
Here.
Trustee Harding.
Here.
Trustee Holm.
Here.
Trustee Moody.
Here.
Trustee Nugent. Here. Trustee Seeger.
Here.
Trustee Wisniewski.
Here. I'm going to have Eileen adjust that speaker before we make ourselves all go deaf. There we go. Okay. We will start with citizen participation per Village Resolution 2017-01. Anyone wishing to address the village board during citizen participation will be allowed 5 minutes. Your subject must specifically relate to matters under the jurisdiction of the village board, whether on the agenda or not. The village board should not engage in a discussion regarding comments because it was not part of the publicly noticed agenda. Upon conclusion of this citizen participation segment, members of the audience are not allowed further comment unless they're participating in a public hearing or specifically allowed by a majority vote of the village board due to involvement in an agenda item. That said, I think we do have someone. Come on up. Just push the little person icon there, it'll turn green, and state your name and address, please.
My name is Christopher Matlock. Address is 2948 Main Street. The project at 2954 Main Street has become an intolerable nuisance. The grantor deemed by the city has no respect or common courtesy towards its neighbors or city statutes. Early in the project, there were weeks of a burning pile of mildew, wood, and cabinets being burnt in the back of the house. Despite numerous altercations with police to stop burning, he still continued to burn materials to save money on disposal. My youngest child was burned by floating debris, and to his response was, well, they have state insurance. A comment like that would not have been made if my child was white. So I have to keep enduring this person next to me with no regards to his neighbors, destroys my property, in which cameras and a temporary fence had to be installed to help protect my property. At what point is this person held accountable? And I'm not the only one with complaints, just a taxpayer who's had enough. Thank you for hearing me out on this matter.
Thank you.
My name is Heather Eckert. My address is 2948 Main Street. I'm also here to speak regarding the project at 2954 Main Street. This project has been a continual nuisance since this property was taken over. Numerous city ordinances have been broken and continue to be broken every day. With no accountability or respect for his neighbors or anyone around him, for over 2 years, we've had to deal with continuous banging of hammers and loud saws every day of the week, including Sundays, starting at 7 a.m. with no end in sight. Not only has this only caused my family distress, damaged my property, but he has also damaged the property of other people, of other neighbors. Busted out 3 of their windows and took over a year to fix them. She taped them up while he continued to work on his own property. He's a disruption to our everyday lives, and it's just not fair anymore. Like there's no end in sight. My mother just had emergency surgery and came to sleep at my house and had to go somewhere else because Sunday morning he's out there using a router saw, burning piles of wood that are 20 feet wide and 20 feet high that have been in a moldy house for years and years because he said it's saved on the dumpster. Everything that he does is shiesty and around the corner, and it's an inconvenience to all the neighbors that have already been there. And it's just not tolerable anymore. Something needs to be done. There's no end in sight for us. When do we get to relax in our own home? When do we get peace and solitude in our own home? When will this project be done? It's been 2 years. There's still not windows up. Not to mention the fact that when he was burning all that out of the house, the police were called numerous times. It wasn't in a fire pit. There's no water source. 6 feet away from our car, 12 feet away from our all-wood barn and house, everything that we've worked for in that house. And he has no consideration for it. and it's time that he's held accountable for his actions, including the storage bins that are in his backyard. The city ordinance states that they must be not weathered. You can have one for up to 60 days in a 365-day year period. He's had two for over 2 years. So I feel that if city ordinances are put into place, everybody needs to be accountable for what the city ordinances are, and there should be no exceptions on it, especially somebody brand new coming in and disrupting the lives of people who are already trying to be stable in their surroundings. It's like a whirlwind. It's like a tornado. Everything is about him, and it's just not fair anymore. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen participation? No, John? Please come on up. You're a citizen too. I like your bow.
I don't know. I got burned by the.
She got burned by the fire.
I'm sorry. Are you okay now? Yeah? Thanks you for coming. It's very brave to stand up in front of everybody. Very good. That's okay. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for coming in, all three of you. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda. One motion and a second will approve all the following items. Any item may be pulled from the list and voted on separately.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second it.
Questions or discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll move on to miscellaneous business. Item 1, update from Victor and Magnolia Sanford on 2954 Main Street. There is an item in the packet. The owner is not here. I think we've heard from the neighbors. We have a problem. Scott and I were at the house a few weeks ago. I've seen minimal progress since you and I had that conversation. Do we have a list of any ordinance issues that we see? Can you hit the mic?
Well, we had that burning issue. We were over there quite a bit. I think the last time I went over there is when he finally got the message, because I yelled very loud. The bins, I know Eileen said today that Planning Commission passed a new ordinance recently
So we have,
about the storage containers.
yeah, ordinance 2024-14 was adopted September 16th of last year. It says temporary construction storage includes any structure, cargo, container, or outdoor storage area designed for the on-site storage of construction equipment and/or materials for an active construction site. Temporary construction storage shall adhere to the following listed regulations. 1, the structure or cargo container shall comply with Section 510-158, standards and procedures applicable to all temporary uses. The structure or cargo container shall be removed within 10 days of issuance of an occupancy permit. 3, projects requiring the structure or cargo container to be in place for more than 365 days shall require a conditional use permit. Said time limit may be extended with village board approval. Item 4, the structure or cargo container shall be limited to a maximum area not exceeding 10% of the property's gross site area. And I am picking out it defines a cargo container as standardized reusable vessels that were, 1, originally designed for or used in the packing, shipping, movement, or transportation of freight, articles, goods, or commodities, and/or 2, originally designed for or capable of being mounted or moved by rail, truck, or ship by means of being mounted on a chassis or similar transport device. This definition includes the terms freight containers and shipping containers. So, how many are on the property right now?
Two.
Two?
Yeah, there's 2.
Okay.
And I know, I spoke with Heather today because she called yesterday about the noise. And Detective Heading drove by, and at that time, when she drove by, the only thing she heard was the leaf blower from across the street. But Heather said that it was at 7 a.m. that the noise, but she had stuff to do, so she didn't call right away, but when she called, everything was quiet at that point. And I know Heather brought up no work on Sundays, but I think what she found online was standards that DPW uses with public projects and contractors, and that we can't enforce those standards. We can only enforce the noise ordinance, which is 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. and it says weekdays, and I don't know how to interpret that weekday thing. To me, when somebody says a week, it's Sunday through Saturday. But if you read the ordinance, some people say weekdays are Monday through Friday, which means nobody can do any work Saturday or Sundays, which I don't think is the intent of it either, because a lot of people work on their house on Saturdays because they work during the week. So I don't think we can tell people they can't do work on their house on Saturdays. And I don't know where to do Sundays, so that ordinance, to me, needs to be looked at, because I don't think I think when it was written years and years ago, I don't know if nobody defined what a weekday was, in my opinion. I guess it kind of looks at what you define. To me, a week is Sunday through Saturday. So any day would be 7 to 10 you can work. Or some people might interpret that to mean Monday through Friday. So I don't know how we enforce. That ordinance is up to debate on how you enforce that part of the ordinance. I mean,
Excuse me, so what am I reading here? 366-8.
yeah, 366-8 sub 7.
Yep, sub B, sub 7, construction or repair of buildings, the erection including excavation, demolition, alteration, or repair of any building, as well as the operation of any pile driver, steam shovel, pneumatic hammer, derrick, steam, or electric hoist, or any other similar equipment attended by a loud or unusual noise other than between the hours of 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. on weekdays, provided, however, that the chief of police shall have the authority upon determining that the loss or inconvenience which would result to any party in interest would be extraordinary and of such a nature as to warrant special consideration, to grant a permit for a period necessary within which time such work and operation may take place within the hours of 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. That was that one. I'm trying to find others. There's stuff about motor vehicles. I don't think that's what we're talking about here. 510-100, I don't know if you've looked at that.
So just while you're looking at those
Please.
ordinances, I definitely am extremely disappointed in the progress that happened with that project. 2 years into it, it is nothing close to where it should be. The lack of Mr. Stanford being in this room right now proves to me that he really doesn't care. He's not putting in the effort to do it. Matt and I did as best we could to have a civil conversation and had discussion points about how we could help him with his project. I was offering my 35 years of experience in the business to guide him in the right way to do this, to get the job done, even my own physical labor if that's what it took. He has my phone number. He never once reached out to me to talk about what we can do, what he needs help with. He talked about his budget. I explained to him that I know a number of different ways to meet his budget in any aspect because of the years that I've been doing this construction. I said I will offer those services for free. I have yet to get a single phone call from him for any kind of help in this project. I think it's an absolute embarrassment with the way that he is proceeding with this project. It's ridiculous that he's putting his neighbors through this, and 2 years later, we don't even have all the windows installed? This is a little aggressive. I don't know if there's anything we can do aside from being extremely forceful on what all of our ordinances identify and making sure that we're penalizing them at every single cost. I don't know if we've had anything when we were in our negotiations and went into a partnership with him on this and any out for us on it. I don't know if that's a possibility, but I can't see the bank sitting with him much longer. 2 years of not having any progress done, title company and the bank alone are gonna have something to say about it. It's really excessive, in my opinion, the way he's gone with this project.
I just want to bring up some dates that I got. I know it's coming up on 2 years. He took ownership of the property May 3rd of 2024, and I spoke with the building inspector today, and he issued the building permit on October 24th of 2024. So for the first 5 months, he did demolition, which you don't need a permit for. And then when he started to do the rehab, that's when he pulled the permit. So he's had the building permit for over a year, and then, yeah, we're coming up on 2 years here in May.
How long were the storage containers there?
Those went in right away in May, I believe. So they've been there since May 3rd.
Because
Shortly after he took ownership of the property, those storage containers came in.
So, ordinance 2024-14 was adopted September 16th of 2024, so that's more than a year. So it's more than 365 days. So I haven't seen a conditional use permit come to the Plan Commission on that. So I think that has to be, either he makes that application and the Plan Commission debates that, or then he's cited, for that. I mean, and I also take issue on the schedule that he's provided us tonight. If you could go up a few pages, Eileen, to his Gantt chart there. He says, number one, doors and windows complete. They're not. Drove by there today. It's not. He's got a door up and a few windows. And that was what, Scott and I emphasized, that had to be done by this meeting to show that there was progress. So I guess he's not here. I think there's some research that we need to do. We need to address the commentary from the residents. I guess I'd ask that we put this on our agenda I know we're doing budget. It's a long meeting, but let's put this on our next meeting in 2 weeks. I think we need to lay out what the specific ordinance violations are with him, that this is not factually correct. That's what he's given us. And I think if we can pull that agreement that we have and see what else or issues we have there. I know he has a deposit with us. He has asked for that back. I'm not inclined to entertain that conversation. Other thoughts or comments?
Sounds like you've given us mapped out steps. I appreciate that. We'll take it from there.
How long has this property been a thorn in our side?
Too long.
When I first came on the board, he said he was going to have it done this May, and now it's another year that he's going to take to have it done. I feel he's out of money or something. There's got to be some kind of financial problems that he can't finish it, because that should have been done a long time ago.
Well, he should have been here tonight. They should have been here tonight representing themselves. So, yeah, October, doors, windows, utilities. Maybe if you get the windows in and doors, maybe that'll cut down on some of the noise on the inside. But, yeah, not acceptable.
Has there been any more burning after that issue? 'Cause if we've got kids
Nobody's
getting
called
hurt,
about any burning. I don't know. if
there has been more burning? How recently?
Last summer,
Last summer, but not in the past
no,
few months, okay.
no. But, I mean, his whole family is over screaming at us, why did we call?
So we can put together what we see as issues for us to discuss it in 2 weeks. I think we give him notice that this is going to be back on the agenda, that we're send him the link to this conversation. This is recorded. He can hear what his neighbors have to say. All right.
Maybe we have an update every meeting, just to keep the pressure on.
Yep. That, feel like I'm at work.
I agree with keeping the pressure on. But like I said, in the conversations that we had with him, the offer of help in every aspect by help, but by what I mean in help, and he just simply didn't even take any of it. And then his complete disregard to not even show up for this meeting. I don't know that any pressure at all is going to help us in this situation.
Other thoughts, comments? Okay, so it takes a process usually. So thank you for coming and giving us your experience, and then we'll have this on our agenda in 2 weeks. All right, thank you. All right, moving on to the next item. Presentation and direction to staff for well 10 siting study.
We have Ben Wood with us this evening from Strand. As you remember, Strand is the consulting firm we utilize for the water utility. He's going to bring us up to speed on the well 10 siting study.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, everyone. Nice to be in front of you again. So for the past several months, we've been working on a well siting study, and I'm going to, through the presentation today, just give a refresh on the project need, the project background, and then an update on where we're kind of at currently in the well siting study schedule, and kind of a decision point for the village board to consider. So this next slide here is project need. So I think everyone's familiar with PFAS at this point. We've talked about it in past meetings. I'm sure it's been on the forefront of Jason's mind also. So the village has 2 shallow aquifer wells, well number 6 and well number 8, that have had detectable levels of PFAS. Well number 8 currently exceeds the proposed maximum contaminant level, or MCL, that EPA and the Wisconsin DNR have kind of laid out. Well 6 has had detects. It's kind of pretty well below the limits, actually, and you can see those numbers there. Next slide, please. In 2023, Strand conducted a whole water distribution system master plan, and one of the items we looked at was how to address the village's PFAS issue. So shown in the images there on the right are the different technologies or options that we looked at. We looked at treatment using RO, ion exchange, granular activated carbon, explored blending, but ultimately arrived at the decision, or recommendation, I should say, of source water replacement. That was because it was the most cost effective. It was cost comparable to treating wells 6 and 8 together, but had the advantage of being a brand new facility versus reinvesting in older facilities. Drilling a new well, you would drill that into the deep aquifer. You would case off or isolate the well from the shallow aquifer. It's the shallow aquifer that is at risk of any ground surface contaminants can just infiltrate in and get in that shallow aquifer. But if we can get into the deep aquifer and case off the shallow aquifer, you can get into some source water that has some contamination, namely radionuclides, but radionuclides have been around from a municipal treatment and regulatory perspective for 20 to 30 years now. It's a pretty well-known, well-established technology of what you're dealing with. In contrast, PFAS regulations are pretty new treatment technologies on a municipal scale. We're starting to see systems that have been in operation for 2 or 3 years now, and they are effective. One issue that the industry is kind of figuring out is With the PFAS treatment technology, the contamination gets absorbed into this filter media, and then it builds up to a certain point, and you have to dispose of that media. So you kind of have an ultimate chain of custody responsibility part of that, that, again, the industry has to figure out as far as how do you manage that? Can it be incinerated, special landfill, or something else? In 2023, the costs opinion on a new deep aquifer well with radium treatment was $6.2 million. If you adjust that using the construction cost index just to present day, it's $6.63 million. This paragraph here is an excerpt from the recent DNR sanitary survey. It's approximately every 3 years. The DNR field rep will actually come out to the village and kind of do a boots on the ground review with village staff of the water utility infrastructure to review that everything's in code compliance. The bold text here is a highlight from that most recent sanitary survey. The DNR is saying here the utility's highest priority should be deciding on a long-range plan for well number 8. So with that in mind, Jason kind of got us engaged to follow up on our recommendation from the 2023 plan to do this well siting study. This next flow chart just explains the various steps that it takes to implement a well. I'm not going to go through all of these, but to point out that these are kind of like major steps, and we're still on the very first dot on this roadmap, if you will, where we're doing preliminary design and permitting. Following this stage, you would go through various phases of potentially test well, actual well construction. After you build the well, you can do more testing of the water quality and capacity. Then you actually design the well facility, build that. So it's about all in about a 2.5-year process. And again, we're in the first several months of that. So well siting scope, how it started is with the intent, we knew it would be a little bit of a challenge to find a suitable site in the village for a new well. We started with the intent of doing a high-level screening of approximately 5 preliminary well sites, and then prepare a more in-depth review that meets all the DNR requirements for studies on 2 sites. As we've gotten into this, and I'll get into in the next several slides, it's pretty complex figuring out a new site based on all the criteria. We've done a screening of approximately 12 sites so far, and we're hoping to identify one, and I feel like we're honing in on one advantageous site to do the in-depth DNR requirement study. So this points out the difference between those kind of high-level screening review under that first major bullet. So we look at proximity to contamination, floodplains. Is there already existing water main that's a large enough diameter to take on the flow from a new well versus if it's in a remote site, you might have to extend a lot of water main, and that adds project cost, property ownership, things of that nature. DNR has a whole other list of things that you have to review and check off when you're looking at a siting study, but this just points out or introduces the criteria for the high-level screening. All right, so there is a ton going on this map, but this is kind of the village area map of just the results of the high-level screening. So I'm going to try to talk through this color by color on things that jump out at first to me. So first you'll see some yellow X's. Those are sites that we kind of honed in on to run through this high-level screening. You'll see various colors here of orange, yellow, and red. Those all refer to potential contamination sources. The information for that comes out of a DNR database for known spills and sources of contamination. So the red sites are deal breakers. The yellow sites are kind of, if you decide that might be feasible, you have to kind of go through an extra process to vet out if that issue will be a deal breaker or if that's something that's a lower grade contamination that you can kind of work around. The size of those, and then where there's orange, it's just where red and yellow are overlapping. The size of those circles actually represents the DNR regulated setback radius from that particular point of contamination based on the type of contamination that was reported. We have some blue bubbles and a light blue circle. That represents the cone of depression for each of the 4 existing wells in the village. So ideally, we want to stay away from that so that a new well wouldn't be competing for some of the same water that is feeding one of your existing wells, or those can start to kind of work against each other a little bit. And then, of course, we have water bodies and floodplains, et cetera. There is one kind of very important beige dashed line that kind of cuts through the village in a northwest to southeast kind of fashion. That's an approximate boundary of the Maquoketa Shale. That's important because that shale layer creates a confining layer between the shallow aquifer and the deep aquifer, and it's what makes sure that surface level contaminants like PFAS don't end up penetrating into the deeper aquifer. And we want to stay on, in this case, the west side of that boundary where the shale layer is believed to exist down here, so that we can get under it and kind of isolate ourselves into some better water quality. You can go to the next slide. So that was very busy, but what we did here then is create a scoring matrix. So we took all those sites with the yellow X's, and let's just talk through the top line. I won't belabor this whole table, but proximity to existing water main. We gave each site a potential score. It scored the highest if it already had 12-inch diameter water main. It scored the lowest if it didn't have 12-inch water main within 1,000 feet of it. Again, it's kind of a surrogate for extra costs that might get added on to a project. So we did a similar criteria scoring for property acquisition. Proximity to well 5 in this case is the other deep aquifer well that we want to try to make sure the new well and well 5 won't compete. Contamination, proximity to shale, and proximity to future growth areas. The next slide here shows kind of the scoring result after running it through that criteria. We looked at the western part of the village near the school grounds. This one didn't score as well just due to proximity to water main. We looked at the dog park right here by Village Hall and the airport. The airport in particular didn't score the greatest because even though, if you recall from that map, the airport was colored mostly yellow for contamination, so that's like you got to look into it more, maybe you can deal with it. Airports are one of the known contributors to PFAS contamination. PFAS or forever chemicals are in a ton of stuff, but as far as like acute sources of contamination, it's like firefighting foam and de-icing and things of that nature associated with airports makes them just kind of more at risk. So that steered us to a number of sites in the southern village, and if you go to the next slide, we kind of hit the high points as to why the southern area of the village kind of became the next area to focus on. It's in the proximity of future growth, which just helps bolster the distribution system to areas of where new demand and new fire protection needs are going to spring up. It has the lower amounts of potential contamination sources. There's a lot of property available, and it's, as far as proximity to other wells, it's on the other side of the village from the other wells. And I guess to reiterate, there's a lot of vacant parcels there in the business park. So this next slide will show us the same map, but just zoomed in to the southern part of the village. So you can see the kind of teal, blue, and purple area on the upper right, that's wetlands and floodplains. The red over to the west are contamination sources. Just off the page in the southwest or the bottom left is the closed landfill site. What we've done on this map is instead of coloring all the yellow circles, we just have the yellow circle outline just to make the map more readable. You can see kind of the beige line of the Maquoketa Shale. We want to stay on the west side of that. And then the only feature that's added to this map are these blue squares. So those blue squares represent, if you're familiar with the concept, if you're building like a residential property, what your buildable area is, net of your setbacks and things like that. Similar concept here for wells. You have minimum setbacks to sanitary sewers, force mains, and property lines. So once we draw all those setbacks into the vacant parcels in the business park, you can put a well wherever there is, as long as you're inside these blue squares. We've put these solid yellow stars on the ones that are furthest to the west in the business park. The primary reason for that is we want to give ourselves as much buffer room to be on the correct side of the shale as possible, just to do everything we can to make sure that we actually get to take advantage of that. But other sites could work. So that's where you can put a well, but we also have to keep in mind that this well is going to need a building, presumably with treatment. So these couple of properties kind of being set back a little bit are advantageous from a site design perspective also. Next slide, please. One option that we've considered here a little bit is whether or not to drill a test well. This is optional. DNR doesn't require that a test well be drilled. One of the potential advantages to a test well is it's less expensive. A disadvantage is you don't get to reuse the test well. So for the flow rate that we're targeting, the final well, the permanent well, will probably be between a 20-inch diameter and 24-inch diameter borehole, whereas a test well is done with about an 8-inch diameter borehole. So it's not as expensive. You get to kind of treat it as an exploratory excavation, so to speak. You drill down there and you can see what's there, and then you can kind of plan better to know if this is a good site. One reason that could be an advantage here in this is the second bullet, DNR, the Wisconsin Geological and Natural History Survey and well contractors don't have much information in this area as to where that shale layer is. The only way you get that information is by drilling a well, and no one's drilled a well that deep over here yet. If we were to do a test well, you get to learn a little bit about the water quality, certainly the geologic formations, the well pumping capacity, and you can do that with minimal permitting requirements. We've talked a little bit about the importance of that Maquoketa Shale formation, but really I want to focus on this last bullet point here for a second. There's a cost versus benefit. I'll get to it later in the presentation, but the cost of just constructing a test well is about $500,000, whereas the cost of doing the permanent well is $1 million. So if you spend the $500,000, you don't get to kind of bank that toward the $1 million, but you spend the $500,000 to affirm that, yes, the $1 million final well will work. Now, I will say doing a test well is not foolproof. If we have just generically, I'm going to probably against my better judgment throw out some numbers here. You know, if we have 65% confidence that this is a good well site and that we can do something to construct a well that's going to work well, if we did a test well, that probably only increases to 75%. You do learn some, but you don't learn everything until you do the final well. One of the reasons for that is with that smaller 8-inch diameter borehole, when you're test pumping that, you can't pump it as fast and thereby pull water from the extents that you will when you build the final well. So there is still a risk that even from a test well to a final well, when you're pumping that 20-inch diameter hole, that you're pulling a lot more water from different areas and might get different water quality. So we'll come back to this when we look at the cost, but we can go to the next slide. I guess the next slide is the cost. So there's three sections to this cost presentation. The first total of $6.65 million, that's an updated cost opinion for a deep aquifer well, the treatment equipment, the building around that, a backwash holding tank that would be included as required as part of the treatment, the site, electrical, engineering, contingency, the whole gamut. The next chunk of the table is the test well. Again, that should be approximately $500,000 with some contingency and some bidding documents, et cetera, roughly $630,000. So if you went forward with the whole thing, we're talking $7.3 million. If we skip the test well, it would be $6.65 million. But again, there is a little bit of risk of, going straight to drilling that final well and not really knowing until we get to that step what exactly we'll be in for as far as water quality and design. But yet, I will say the intent of doing a deep aquifer well is to get into the geological formations, one being the Ironton Formation, and then there's a second one called the Mount Simon. They are both used throughout the state. They're pretty far-reaching, and they have pretty known water quality that go along with them. Next slide. I did want to point out that right now we've started the process relative to a safe drinking water loan. You might be familiar with this. I believe the village has used clean water funds for wastewater projects. Similar program, but for the drinking water side, it's called the Safe Drinking Water Loan instead of Clean Water Fund. The bipartisan infrastructure law created 5 years of a special funding category for emerging contaminants, which was targeted at PFAS. If this coming year is the last year that emerging contaminant money is available, the advantage to East Troy is that includes principal forgiveness of up to 50% of the project cost, up to $1.6 million per municipality, and it doesn't matter what your median household income is. So if it were either Clean Water Fund or Safe Drinking Water Loan for any other project, the advantage would only be low-interest loans. You wouldn't qualify for principal forgiveness, but this emerging contaminant program, you're eligible for that regardless. Long-term low interest rate currently at about 3.2%. So what we did on last week, it was due October 31st, was submit an intent to apply letter. That's a first step. It's a no commitment step. It allows you to just kind of see where you'll rank on the priority scoring, and we'll understand our likely position relative to principal forgiveness in late April of 26. The formal loan application is due June 30th, 2026, and the downside to this program is it doesn't do a good job of letting applicants apply and then deciding to go forward with a project if the funding looks favorable. This program does a good job of bringing funding alongside projects that are happening anyways. And the reason I say that is part of the formal application that's due June 30th are final well bidding documents that are required. So you have to start the design process before you even have the funds secured.
But that's just for the well itself, correct? Not the
Correct.
building, not the facilities, just the well?
Correct, correct. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah, they recognize that you don't know the water quality until after you drill the well, so they allow you to just proceed with drilling the well. So it's a much lower kind of commitment as far as engineering costs compared to designing the full works. Next slide. This is a rate impact calculation. Water utilities are regulated by the Public Service Commission, and there's a standardized process for going about calculating rates and getting the financial approval to move forward with a project. This gets to be a little bit nuanced, but do know that this is PSC's rate estimation calculation. You won't know the actual impact to rates until after completion of the project. So in the PSC process, you have to go through, before you start the project, you have to go through them to get a construction authorization, and that's where they use this rate impact estimation calculation. And then they tell you, okay, after you go ahead and incur all your final costs at the end of the final payment, then they'll make you go through a full or conventional rate increase. Of course, you can work with your financial consultant to run a model to figure out a better understanding of what the actual rate will be. But what's shown here is just intended to align with this estimated calculation. So I actually looked at what your utilities revenue was for annual year 2024, and then you kind of break this into what's utility finance plant, which basically means if it's funded only by rates, versus what's contributed plant, which is somewhat gifted to the utility, if you will, or off the books of the utility. You take on the asset without taking on the cost. So think that's where the grants would be accounted. If you've ever received water main from a developer, it kind of ends up in that category. Impact fees, special assessments, all kind of count as contributed. So for every $1 million of utility finance plant, it would impact your rates by 12.1%. Every $1 million of contributed plant, it would impact your rates by approximately 2.8%. So using a blend of project costs and how much might be contributed or not here, the potential rate impact is anywhere from 60% to 88%. Again, that's something that PSC would not have you go through till the end of the project, lining it up with the whole schedule. That would be 2028 when you would be going through a conventional rate case. Whereas this number estimates it compared to 2024 water sales. In 2028, it'd be based on 2027's water sales.
But it would still require PSC approval before construction.
Correct. Next slide. This is just a Gantt chart that kind of breaks down the schedule. So the first line item is where we are tonight. Right below that, the well siting study and the DNR required preliminary engineering report are, I would say, at a point where they're about 70% complete, and we're hoping to finish those by the end of the year. We've submitted the line 4 there is the intent to apply for that Safe Drinking Water Loan Program. Following some direction, next step would be a joint pre-application meeting with both the Public Service Commission and the DNR to get their input on the permitting requirements for the project. Let's see here. Item number 6, we would be submitting the engineering report to the agencies for their review and comments. They have to approve the well siting study before you can go ahead and drill the well. Line 7 just shows that we would have to start design in April in order to have bidding documents on the well done in time to apply for June 30th. Item 8 there is that test well, which again is optional. The test well will not require PSC approval, so that's something that if the village were interested, you could kind of proceed as soon as ready. And then it's expected that final well bidding and construction would start kind of Q3 next year. And well facility design can start while that's happening, but doesn't get completed until several months thereafter. And then again, construction all through 2027 on the actual facility. And under the schedule, it'd be producing water for your system in 2028. So, I threw a lot at you, and I look forward to your comments and questions. We're at a point here where we've screened a lot of sites, and we would like some village board direction on pursuing a particular site, whether that's concurring with our recommendation of the particular site in the business park or pivoting to a different direction. We would love to keep things moving to wrap up our report by the end of the year, but understandably, if the village needs more time, we would just ask for some direction within the next 3 months. And that just leaves us in a position where we feel like we could still react and keep the project or keep the village in line with eligibility for that safe drinking water loan deadline at the end of June. Curious on your input on whether or not to proceed with the test well. And then depending on direction here, just know that the next step after finishing the well siting study would be contemplating authorization to start on that final well design and construction. Again, that would be for the well hole itself, not for the facility that goes along with it. Okay. That's all that I have, but would love to open it up for discussion.
Can we talk about well 8? Maybe a little bit of history on that, and maybe some of the board members don't understand that. And maybe refresh my memory too. When did well 8 go in?
So well 8 is actually our newest well. It was drilled in approximately 2004. It's 101 feet deep, I believe, so it is a shallow aquifer well, as Ben was speaking to. And then, so DNR PFAS testing started in 2022, and we did our first round in 2023. And then that's when we found that well 8 does contain PFAS and above the maximum containment level.
So there was no PFAS done in 2004?
Previous to that, it wasn't
there was
on
no
anyone's
testing?
radar.
Really?
Correct. So as a group in here, we decided to voluntarily shut well 8 off. And I believe it was December 8th of 23 that we turned it off. And we still have the ability, if we had a well go down and we had a situation where we needed the water, we could go turn the well on. We got to notify the DNR, and then we have to publicly notify all our consumers. And we have until 2029 to have a plan in place for how we're going to address well 8.
Well, so quick clarification, by 2029, you have to comply with the regs. So right now, you're in compliance because well 8 is shut off.
Sure.
So I think, if I may, I think what you're getting at is, if you haven't, another way of saying it, if you haven't decided of doing anything else with well 8 by 2029, you would have to.
In 2029, the date in 2029, then we can no longer use the wells.
Correct.
So again, right now, we're functioning without it. As we all know, the village is continuing to grow. There potentially could be some enhancements to wells 7 and 5 that help our situation. What that doesn't help with, though, is redundancy, right? So the more wells we have, the less likely we are to be in a situation where, if 2 wells go down at once, or, we get some development that, that comes to town, it doesn't leave us susceptible to things, so.
What did we spend on well 8, remember?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if this is too early in the process. Any idea what the impact would be on the average water bill for a resident?
Yeah, that's a great question. So not knowing what your current water bills are, it would be, I would put it in that 60 to 88%. So unless Jason or Eileen, if you know what the typical water bill is, keep in mind that also on the water bill, you have a wastewater component. You usually have garbage collection, maybe a storm sewer fee, potentially some other things. So it would get added just to that water portion of the bill.
Question for now. I know it doesn't answer your question, but. Right, so as you all know, we just talked about this from the wastewater side, right? We were talking about facilities planning, and everyone in this room knows that your sewer and your water is your water bill. So it's not just one utility, it's both. So I think we're fortunate that we're talking about all this at the same time and not going through one of these processes and then a year or two later, another one comes along. We have the opportunity to discuss them both now, which I think is kind of a win. I mean, it maybe doesn't seem like it, but from a planning perspective, it could be.
In the past, when we put a new well, do we usually do the test well?
I wasn't in this capacity in 2004 when that process was going on, so I don't know if we did a test well or not. I would think it was less likely back then because, again, it's a shallow aquifer well, and there's way less risk involved.
I will say real quick, when we looked into existing records of well construction or well logs in the area, we didn't come across any test wells, and they would have been reported to DNR and part of that database. So I don't think so.
I've got a question on the opinion of probable cost page. We see the test well subtotal is $630,000. Above that, you've got the well drilling cost, $1 million, and then a variety of different add-ons.
Yep.
If we skip the test well and just do the well drilling, we know it's $1 million cost. Are there any other costs that would be needed to be incurred before we could determine whether that was a good location or not?
It's a good question, and the answer is no. So if you decided not to do the test well, just what's in that first table, the 6.65 million, it's got that $1 million well drilling item. So that includes, the actual process for that is they drill the well, you would case off the shallow aquifer while you're going down, and then you would start a series of water quality and pump tests right there as part of the well construction. So you're getting the same type of data, and actually probably the most accurate data because it's on the well that you intend to have as your permanent well.
So what would be at risk then would be the $1 million, not necessarily the 6.6.
Correct. There is a chance that we get into it because we're talking about going to a depth of 1,500 feet. That's how deep well number 5 is in the village right now. And you're talking about it in an area where the agencies and well drillers just don't have good information. So as much as we would like to say there's all kinds of geologic mapping, et cetera, you really don't know for sure until you get into it. And unfortunately, there have been circumstances of drilling a well and the well hole doesn't work out for whatever reason. The hole itself is not stable, or the formation you were hoping to get into is just not panning out for some reason. Water quality is not what you expected, and it's not usable. And that's what's at risk.
Any questions or comments from this side of the?
Referring to the Maquoketa line.
Yep.
So, for example, with the two possible locations on Honey Creek, does it make a big difference with how much closer you are to that line? For example, the north versus the south of that street? those two X's? One's a little bit closer.
Yeah, good question. I would say where we have the two solid color stars, and if you just go back probably about 3 slides, Eileen, it's, as you're scrolling backwards, it's the first map that you'll run into. There we go. So those two solid stars, I think are generally both okay. In some ways, as far as being further away from that Maquoketa Shale line, the star on the left is more advantageous, but the site is a lot tighter. So as far as thinking ahead to how you could actually construct the facility, make sure that a well rig is always going to have clean access to get back there to replace well pumps, et cetera. It's actually the star on the right that would be our recommendation, but either one of those would work. We understand there's certainly a land use component that comes into this. You know, if these parcels are both vacant right now, but someone is interested in putting a particular business on one of those, you know, let them go ahead, we can use the other one. Yep.
Any concern about the highway runoff?
If it were a shallow well, I would say yes. So part of one of the daunting tasks we have in the water industry is trying to look ahead and predict what's going to be the next thing. Okay, so 25 years ago it was radium, now it's PFAS. What is it going to be 25 years from now? I can tell you that one of the contaminants that are starting to get sampled for are all of the compounds that are byproducts of tire wear. So again, that's a surface level contaminant, along with chlorides from like salting the roads. That's a surface level contaminant, and it makes a shallow well not attractive. Shallow wells, whatever that next contaminant is, shallow wells are always going to be subject to that type of contamination. So in a deep aquifer well, we'd be looking to case that off. So chlorides, tire compounds, whatever the next thing is not expected to be an impact to the deep aquifer.
So this may be a really crazy question, but we've got number 5 that's already at 1,500 feet. What's stopping us from just taking one of our existing wells and going deeper with it?
That is a decent question. I would say, let's take well 7, for example. Well 7 produces a lot of water. It's close to Lake Beulah. The confining layer actually does not exist where well 7 is. So well 7, I believe, is about 300 feet deep.
Correct.
So you could take that one deeper, but there's like nothing to case off, so to speak. You'd kind of be blending the waters in there. I'll also tell you, just from a practicality standpoint, like what if we took well 6, cased off the shallow aquifer and drilled down into the deep aquifer? You'd probably find, just from a construction perspective, it'd be more expensive than just taking a new site and drilling a new well.
And potentially, if you were to do that with 6 or 8, it would affect 5 as well, because it's in that
Yeah,
cone.
yep. Think of it in terms of, like we were talking about remodeling earlier, right? Like if you loved your cabinets, but you wanted them refinished, and you asked your contractor, like, well, can you just take all these out and refinish them and bring them back? They might tell you you're better off just buy new ones and we'll put new ones in. You know what I mean? Similar aspect to trying to reuse the same well hole and go deeper with it.
So looking back to Jim's question here, the usage, I think, when we've looked at these different rate cases on the water side, is a 12 to 15,000 gallons per quarter. So I think our last rate case was 2023. Is that right? So I think projecting that on the water portion of the bill would be important for us to know. I would like, maybe not to, for you guys to pick a site, but I think as we get at the appropriate time further into this, I know when we had that last discussion about rates back in '23, we did a committee of the whole, try to invite, the public in to have that conversation. I don't want a repeat of what happened in Mukwonago.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's just kind of the administrative, how do we, go about this? Is there any role that something like ground penetrating radar might help us here in citing one of these two and trying to save us on some of these costs?
It's a good question. I've never explored that. It's certainly something that I could discuss with well drillers or DNR or both, and just see if they've got any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm just, as you said, the geologic understanding there is pretty vague. So, too, like, are there any local geology departments and the local universities interested in any of this, And so, I'm just trying to think outside the box there. Because of that shale, though, we're always going to get radionuclides, right?
So it's not the shale that produces that, but it's the formations under the shale that we're trying to get into. They're just naturally occurring in those sandstone and stuff that's down there. Yep.
Yeah.
So well 5, again, the deeper well, does have it, but it's at an extremely low dosage, so that's why it's not a concern, and we don't treat for it at well 5.
Okay. Yeah, I just know, like, for myself and others, because of what comes in and around shale, we get a lot of radon, so we have a lot of radon mitigations here. So, but that's, as you said, more at the surface layer than it is maybe 1,500 feet down. What about iron? I know, is it Will 7 that has the iron issue? What are your thoughts on that for these two sites?
So actually, well 5, just frankly, like, you are so fortunate with the water quality that you get out of there. So it's actually, you've got the shallow aquifer, a confining layer. You've got, I think it's the Ironton, another confining layer, and then the sandstone below that. So this middle one typically has the most iron, and the lower one has the most radionuclides. The way that your well 5 is constructed is that shallow one is cased off, and then the well hole is open through the Ironton down to, I believe it's the St. Peter's sandstone, where the radionuclides are. And in this really cool way, the iron gets blended with the non-iron water on the bottom, and the radionuclide water gets blended with the radionuclide water on top, and the result is you get water that has some, but not a lot of iron, and some, but not a lot of radium, just because of the mixing that's happening between those two separate but both deep aquifers.
Who did that well for us?
That's a great question. It's more a byproduct of the geology, perhaps, than the particular well driller, but yeah, that one worked out perfectly. If we could do well 10 that way, and the numbers we show you are intended to be full scope if you need to address everything. There's a chance, I don't want you to make your decision based on the following, but there's a chance we drill this well and it turns out very similar to well 5, and there's about, within that 6.65 million, about 2.5 of that is related to iron and radium treatment. Just being practical, you're probably going to need treatment. It would kind of be like hitting the lottery if you didn't, but there's a chance.
What's the, you mentioned PFAS treatment is relatively new, and you mentioned the challenges with that. As we go down this path, you talked about 2029, that's, I'll say 3 years from now.
Yep.
What's the likelihood that the cost to remediate well 8 becomes cheaper than drilling a new one in 3 to 5 years' time?
Yep, it's a good question, and I would say We've actually done a couple of PFAS treatment projects and are doing a couple of studies for other communities right now. And so we have some of the most up-to-date pricing. All treatment systems consist of some type of media that is chemically designed to attract the contaminant of concern, in this case PFAS. That media has to be housed within some kind of a filter vessel. And the way that technology works is you need to kind of pre-treat if you've got some solids in your water, which most well waters do. The fixed cost is more in the vessels and the media, and the long-term life cycle cost has more to do with how long will that media last? Will it last 9 months? You got to change it out twice every 3 years, or it will last 2.5, 3 years. That's where the cost kind of comes in. So I think it'll be, interestingly, by 2029, I think enough of these systems will be in place that the costs are really dialed in. But right now, I would still say that we've got a pretty good confidence level of what that cost is. I can also tell you, like, another community where we're piloting PFAS treatment right now. They have a really fancy well house that looks like it blends into a residential neighborhood, and it's got a 2.5-car garage. We're able to work with the vendor to fit all of the new vessels right inside of that garage space. So very, very little facility cost. It's more equipment and installation. Your well 8 site is actually your smallest well building out of all of them, I believe. Correct, Jason? So there's vacant land there, but you're talking about constructing a brand-new building to go along with the equipment. So that's what makes that a little more expensive. Now, if you just treated well 8, I'm going to guess, just for the sake of round numbers, if well 10 with treatment, new site, everything, 6.65 million, I'm going to guess that just treating well 8 is probably more on the order of 4.5 million. What we had done in 2023 when we came up with the numbers is we said, since well 6 has DTEX for PFAS, even though it's below the level, if we're building a new treatment facility over there by well 8, let's build it large enough so that you could have some extra vessels in there so that if well 6 levels changed and we're suddenly over the limit, that you could run, I believe it was about 1,400 feet of water main from well 6 to get that over to a common treatment site. So that was kind of that all-in cost. Part of what comes into the thought process, I mean, we could think about a little bit more and report back to you also, is at that point when the two options were kind of cost comparable, we know that well 6 is one of the older facilities, kind of wood frame construction built in the 70s. And there is an element of, since we're spending so much money, we can spend that adding treatment to older facilities, or we can spend that in getting a brand new facility and you get more life out of the whole of the well and the treatment combined.
Yeah, I think for our longer-term discussion, I'd like to see those kind of side by side.
Sure.
You know, and I think that's fair for the public to be able to see that and weigh in on that. Because I agree with you. I think there's the risk issue, and, you know, again, every year the technology on the PFAS gets better and better, right? I would hope that it also gets cheaper.
Sure.
But I get to your point, we have extra construction costs that maybe not everybody would have there. Would you say then, if we did proceed with well 10, that we would not abandon well 8, that we would just keep it shut down and maybe at some point in the future treatment would become viable?
That's a good question. Our assumption had been that well 8 would get abandoned, but it gets down to what would DNR actually require when well 29 comes around. Now, even in situations where, I guess to cut to the chase, I got to believe that they would let you put this in kind of a mothballed emergency standby kind of mode, rather than out and out abandoning it, which would be, you know, backfilling it with bentonite, and it's just permanently sealed off. But yeah, so far we had assumed that we would just be abandoning it.
And those would be costs above and beyond the cost you presented here?
Correct.
Okay. Any other fun news?
No, so I guess getting back to the rate discussion, what is it you would like to see?
Well, before we do that, let's go back to your list of your timeline and what you need to know. So you're looking to make a site selection within the next month for a well 10, no later than 3 months, and then the question to proceed with the test well.
And again, I think the importance here of the timing is the possibility of $1.6 million grant, right? I mean,
Correct.
that's really
Yep.
what's driving any sort of, let's try to make a decision sooner than later, because that's coming to a close.
Yep, yeah, so we're working backwards from that June 30th deadline, which means if we're talking about a new well, we just need direction. We would love to have it in 3 months, but like the drop dead would be if we knew by 1st of April, if we were under contract to put together the design documents for the well, I think we could still make that happen.
Can you talk a little bit about our potential for principal forgiveness?
Yeah, sure. So I think the potential is good. So I'm not prepared with actual numbers, but it's about $20 to $40 million a year that DNR had in this program for 5 years. Again, this is the 5th year. Communities that did really well got in right away on that first year, and certainly don't say that to make you feel bad about yourselves. A community that comes to mind is like West Bend. They had to decide immediately, like, we don't care what's going to change in the technology over the first couple of years. We don't mind being the first. We don't mind blazing the trail. They applied early and got, I think it was like almost $3 million of grant funding. But they were one of the few that had that level of confidence to go after that in the first year of the program when this was all a brand new issue. I don't even think the final regulations were known yet. The target concentrations were known yet in that first year of the program. Unspent funds got rolled into the next year. Most communities were in the same boat, still trying to figure out where they stood, how they were going to react. Will something change in the technology? Not all of the money was used in year 2 either, so all of that rolled forward into year 3. Same thing happened, and last year was year 4. We thought that would be a year where a lot of communities finally have a game plan figured out for PFAS, and surprisingly, I don't believe all the money was used last year. So you've kind of got a little bit that was left over from each of those previous years, kind of all adds up to this is the last year of the program, and they gotta use the money. They're not sending it back. So I don't make any guarantees, but I feel really good about your chances of getting some principal forgiveness this round.
Is that money only valid for drilling a new well, or is it valid for remediation?
It would be valid for remediation also, but I guess we would have to discuss that with DNR. Right now, we've submitted the intent to apply with the source water replacement technology as opposed to the treatment technology, but that's something we can explore.
So out of those 2 sites, is there a preference that you all have?
So I think from Strand's perspective, the eastern site was preferred, correct?
Yep, just that star in the middle of the page.
I would tend to agree with that only because it's just a little bit further away from the landfill. And again, we're talking about a deep aquifer here well, assuming that the shale is there and protecting us from any contamination from said landfill.
Plus, we're going to connect those two cul-de-sacs, right? So
Correct.
That might be a good spot.
That's not the Marcus property, right?
It is not.
But it's going to be one of the it's one of the ones we're procuring.
Yes.
Okay.
How much space do we need? We just,
I will say this, I think both stars right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're on the same parcel. It's like a L-shaped parcel there that kind of goes around the corner. We contemplated that parcel could get split and we would only use what we needed. That said, I forget if it's on the order of half to 2/3 of an acre.
Would you run a 12-inch main kind of parallel to the interstate there?
We would not, actually. We would just tap into, to the south, I forget the name of that east-west road, but we would just tap straight into that existing water main there.
It's a corporate circle. And the dots we're connecting
Oh, it's 10.
with the road construction, it's 12-inch water main there. They might be showing 10-inch sanitary.
Oh, yep.
So that's part of the beauty of these sites is there's already existing water main that we can utilize.
If we chose this site and that shale you were mentioning wasn't enough to protect us from the landfill, would we come up with a plan to barrier us from that, from the landfill?
It's a good question. I believe that even if the shale isn't there, if we're going 1,500 feet, for example, at well 5, the top 287, let's just call it 300 feet, is cased off. Even if the shale isn't there, I think because of the proximity to the landfill, we'd be talking about casing off at least that much also. But ultimately, the proof is going to be in the water quality sampling. So what you do is when you're test pumping this, you pump it for 24 hours straight. So the longer you pump it, the farther and farther away you're kind of drawing water toward that hole, and you're sampling the water at that time. And we would do a full gamut of dozens of potential contaminants. One, because DNR requires it anyways, all kinds of volatile organic compounds or VOCs, all types of inorganics, metals, et cetera, they all get tested. So that'd kind of be the final proof, so to speak.
So back to your question, Jason. We have a meeting on December 1st, right? That's the Monday after Thanksgiving. So assuming, yeah, so if we're going to have that meet, I mean, that's basically a month from today. What I'm about to say is a proposal for discussion, not like what I want. But I would prefer to see kind of these comparisons that we've talked about, you know, the remediation and, you know, doing this, talk a little bit more about what the board thinks about drilling the test well, and possibly having that conversation be in a committee of the whole, let the public come in, talk about it, and then we can adjourn from committee of the whole and make any motions and decisions that we need to.
Are we making any decisions on the final site at that point? Just because I'm thinking about the closing on the property is not till mid-December. So we technically don't own the property we're making the decision on.
Okay. Could you guys wait until we close on those properties?
Certainly, but I'll tell you, I think with the questions that I jotted down here, which are understanding the dollars and cents impact to a typical water bill, whether or not there's other technologies like ground penetrating radar that can help without investing in a test well or a permanent well, and then a side-by-side comparison of well 8 treatment versus drilling a new well 10. We can do all that now. We we can have that prepared for you by December 1st. If it's a matter of you needing to wait to have any final action until after, later in December, that's certainly understandable. But just know, we can get you what you need by December 1st.
Other thoughts or ideas to add to my proposal? Okay.
Did you say that you would have rate impact by December
Yeah.
and the different
Correct.
options?
Dollars and cents
Okay.
rate impact. So quite simply, all we'll do is we'll get a hold of whatever your typical water bill is, and then we'll take that 60 to 88% and just escalate it to the water-only portion and just kind of report back on what that.
For each one of the options, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can do that.
Right.
Would it make sense to engage Ellers and have them model this alongside of what we're talking about on the wastewater side?
I think so, and I think the question too that I have for Ellers is, we talked about when we did the bigger 20-something% increase in '23, then similar to what we talked about on the wastewater side of doing more incremental. Like, how does this throw a curveball into that? So I think we need to see, as you said, what this looks like at the end of the day. We go, oh, well, that looks great for the water side. And then we go, okay, there's some pain, but then forgetting we just talked about, the 20-year plan on the other side. So I would say either the 1st or the 15th, whichever works, because you got to coordinate with Strand and you got to coordinate with Ellers. And I think once you guys settle on a date, then I would, we can get some stuff posted on social media and other things about, to see if we can get people here to engage in a conversation about it, to say, this is the beginning of this is why we're opening this up, this is why we want your input. Yes, nobody likes to pay higher rates. We're all going to pay them ourselves because we all live in the village, but, how do we solve this problem, in the right way? And we'll all become armchair geologists. All right.
All right.
Thank you very
all.
much. Thanks
Yep.
for
Thank you.
taking our questions.
All right. We'll see you next go-around.
Okay. Item 3, discussion and direction to staff regarding revisions to the sidewalk dining policy. Danette.
Okay, so the reason this is on the agenda is when Mr. Price brought forth his paperwork for his Main Street Suite Station, he also had submitted an application for sidewalk dining permit, which I clarified is for next year. In looking at the wording of our policy for the permit, it really is worded for restaurants that have alcohol service, not really just any food service, so to speak. So in talking with Eileen about it, she found code for other municipalities that also expanded it to not only include dining on the sidewalk, but also merchandise perhaps. So before I can address Mr. Price's application, we need to have a way to be able to offer that to him, to be able to serve food out on the sidewalk without alcohol service. The example in your packet from a nearby municipality has wording that permits both restaurants without alcohol, and then it also adds wording if they were to serve alcohol, what those regulations would be. In addition, having sidewalk dining permit, we're able to review to make sure that any plan that they have for seating outside or merchandise outside still allows for public access. So without a permit, we wouldn't be able to review any of that. So I guess we're just seeking direction on, would we want to expand our current policy? Do we want to put it into code so that it's got more teeth, so to speak? Eileen, feel free to pipe in any time.
No, you're doing a good job. The only reason I would suggest, well, I shouldn't more than this, but I think the most important reason I would suggest considering putting it in code is we have specific sections that prohibit obstructing the sidewalk. So what we're doing is kind of contradictory to the code. We're doing it as a policy, and we may have started out as a policy just as a trial. It might have been like, hey, we haven't done this before, let's see how this works. So maybe now it does make sense to codify it.
I would codify it. I don't think, in my mind, I don't think I ever had any intention of restricting this to just businesses that sell alcohol. So, thinking about Mr. Price's setup, I guess they do sell alcohol at the coffee shop? They have a license, okay. Yeah, it's Host. I guess that's true.
Is the difference with Excellent, because it's not technically the sidewalk, it's like in a little bit, and that's why?
That's not technically on public sidewalk, correct? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's probably, I'm looking at body language, there's consensus to that as a viewpoint, and I would say let's put it in ordinance, because we've talked about this 2 or 3 times. I think it's time to, make this standardized. I think the merchandise thing is interesting, but yeah, I would want to see, in looking here at Delavan too, like how would we and how do you all as staff want to, because you're the ones who are going to have to deal with the permits and the applications, and does it block it? And then they'll call Jeremy and his officers when somebody, doesn't like it, right? So, from a staff perspective, do you recommend, let's just keep it to restaurants and then see, if we have an interest in merchandise, or do we, go forward from there?
Well, I think you're right. We keep it with the restaurants, and Eileen's correct on the origination of the whole thing was just let's see how it works. And we never really did anything with it. Just said, yeah, it works. So now let's make it into a true ordinance to kind of regulate that. But restaurant, and as we always have with everything in our ordinances, we always kind of hit baby steps, trying to identify the easy stuff to do and work our way into it. So makes sense.
I mentioned I was talking to a customer of mine today, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think it's probably not within the ordinance, but if he's going to be selling ice cream, I feel like that comes with a lot of napkins, and just thinking about where Sauced and the cafe are, there's those 2 city or village trash bins right there, and thinking if he's going to be in the middle of the block, just something to think about as far as if you have to add that in the wording, or if there's going to be receptacles so you don't have napkins and stuff flying all down the block.
That's a great point. Okay, so do you want to take a swing at codifying this in an ordinance?
I will work with Eileen and come back with something at the next board meeting.
All right. So I would say to Mr. Price then, we should have something in place to him in time for him to open. So, okay. Great, thank you. All right, on to staff reports. Fire Chief's October 2025 report. Any questions there for Scott?
Is the motor on the ambulance fixed?
I'm not positive on that one yet. Okay, yes, it is. Sorry.
If anyone is interested, it is out on the Walworth County website. Walworth County engaged the Wisconsin Policy Forum to evaluate possible consolidation efforts. This is kind of an add-on to what we already talked about at our Tri-Troy meeting. So that was presented at our ICC meeting last week. So if you're interested in a very long but interesting report, it is out there. All right, committee reports. Item 1, Booth Lake Memorial Park minutes from September 24th. Joe, anything there?
No, it's quiet. Closed.
We'll see if we get ice fishing this year. All right, item 2, Emergency Services District minutes from September 18th. Anything else there? Okay. Then we have no closed session. Wow. I will move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We adjourn. Thank you very much.